Hi guys, welcome to Techie Ocean. In this tutorial, we'll see how to call an external API in Angular using put method, patch method, and delete method. So this is the continuation of the previous tutorial in this playlist. So let's begin. So this is a sample from the previous tutorial in which we have used the get method and we have used the post method. So we'll just go to jasonplaceholder.typecode.com for some sample external APIs. So you can see here we have get API, we have post APIs, put, patch, and delete. So let's see the structure of one API named as post, and then we are going to use the put, patch, and delete on that API. So I'll just click on post. So you can see all the records of the post API. We have user ID, ID, title, and body, and this is repetitive. So let's go back to our site, and now you can see here we have a put API post/1. 1 is nothing but the ID of the API. So you can see here again that 1 is nothing but the ID. So we are going to update the ID as 1, and we are going to update the other fields like user ID, title, and body using the put method. So let's click on view detailed examples and we'll quickly go to the put method here. So we are going to use this URL post/1. 1 is nothing but ID, as I said. And we are going to update these all fields, title, body, and user ID. So let's call this method in our Angular. So let's quickly go to our previous code. So we are going to create our put method here in the free API service.ts. So let's take a quick recap. We have a free API service which is injectable, and we are just using it in our app.module.ts here. In the app.module.ts, we are also importing HttpClient module because this is important for making any HTTP calls. And in the provider section, we are just passing the free API service which we have created. That is this. And inside this free API service, we are creating our methods for get and post. So here only we are going to create the put method also. Now let's quickly go to the app.component.ts. In the app.component.ts, we are importing this free API service and we are injecting that free API service here. And in the ng on init, we are just invoking that methods using the free API service instance. And we are just getting the data back and displaying in the HTML. Let's go to the free API service.ts. So as you know, in the post API, get API, the structure is same. It is having user ID, ID, title, and body. That is this, ID, title, body, and user ID. So we have already a class with these all fields, that is the class name as posts. So you can see here we have a class post.ts, and it is having all these fields, user ID, ID, title, and body. So we are going to use this class for getting the data and posting the data to this put API. Here in the free API.service, we have already imported the post class, that is this class. And now we are going to call the put method. So I will just write put, which will accept an object of type post, that is this, user ID, ID, title, and body, which we have already seen here. That is, it is accepting a object of type this, ID, title, body, user ID, where ID is nothing but the ID which we have to update. So put, which will accept an object of type post and which is of type observable any. That's it. After this, we are just going to write return. We're just going to write this.http client. HTTP client is nothing but this HTTP client which we have imported from Angular common HTTP and we have injected it here in the constructor. So this.http client dot, and we are going to use the put method. Bracket. Here we are going to use the path of the URL. So the path will be https json placeholder.typocode.com, comma, and we are going to pass the object posts. So very simple, we are using a put method which is accepting a object of type post which is returning an observable, and here we are just writing return this.http client.put method, inbuilt method of Angular, and we are using the URL of the put method and passing the object. So now quickly go to the app.component.ts. Like we have used the get method and post method, in the ng on init we are going to use the put method. So before that, we'll just go to the app.component.ts file. We'll just declare object puts of type post, that is this, which we have to put. Now let's go to our ng on init for calling the API. We'll just write opost equal to new post, opost.body equal to updating the body, and we'll update the other fields like opost.title equal to updating the title and opost.userid equal to 5. So as you know, we are going to use the put method with id 1. So here we are just updating the fields of that id. Now we will just use the free API service which we have injected here in the constructor of the app.component.ts. We'll just write this.freeAPI service dot and the put method here, and we are going to pass our opost object here. Now to invoke this, we just have to write dot subscribe, and inside this subscribe method we are just going to write data curly bracket. So this is nothing but the data which is returned after calling the put API. So whatever data which is returned after calling the put API, I'm going to bind it here. So we have already used this. So we have already used this obj puts object of type post. Here we are just going to write this dot object of post equal to data. So we are calling the put API. In our app.component.ts, we are just using this dot free API service dot put method, passing the object and getting the data. So we are going to bind this data in our HTML here. So let's give a heading, put data returned, and the path of the put API. So whatever data which is returned after calling the put API, I'm going to print it here. So ID, that is object of puts dot id, and the other fields like user ID, title and body, which is returned from the put API that is object puts.id, object puts.userid, dot title and dot body. So let's run this. This is written on the ng init, ng on init. So as soon as we load the page, this will be called and our data will be typed here. So let's see this. So you can see here our put data returned. So return data is id as 1, which is the id which we had to update. User id as 5, title is updated the title, body as updating the body. So this is the object and this is the values which we have already set here while calling the API, and we are getting the same updated record. So these are the test APIs, sample test APIs. These are not actually doing any changes on the server. This is just for demonstration purpose. So similarly, let's create a patch method in free API service.ts. So difference between the put and the patch method is that put method updates the resource and it completely returns a new copy, and the patch method updates the existing copy of the resource. So let's create a patch method which will again accept the object of type post and which will be of type observable. So let's go back to the site where we have a sample patch method. So you can see here we have a sample patch method and a sample URL for the patch method, where we are just patching the title for id as 1 for the post, records of post. So let's patch the title field. So we are using the same object of type class post. So here we are going to write return this dot HttpClient dot the inbuilt patch method, the path of the URL REST API for patch, that is http json placeholder dot typecode.com /post/1, and the object which we are sending, post. So let's call this patch method in app.component.ts. So I'll just go to the app.component.ts. Below this object of put, we'll just write object of patch of type post. Now we'll just use this object for catching the return data from the patch API. So before calling the patch API, we'll just prepare the object. We'll create a new object, post equal to new post, and we'll just write post.title equal to patch the title. So now let's call our patch API, this dot underscore free API service, which is injected here, dot our patch method which we have created here. In the bracket we'll pass the post object, we'll just call the subscribe method, and we'll just catch the data returned from the patch API here in the curly bracket. So we have already defined an object patch of type post, so we can use it here. This dot patch, this dot object of patch equal to the data which is written from the patch API. Now after doing this, we'll just return to our app.component.html. Here we are just going to write the path of the patch data API, patch data return for this REST API, and we'll just print the object which is written from the patch API, that is here, the object which is written from the API. So I'm going to type the ID, user ID, title and body. So we are just updating the title. So let's go to the API. Here you can see we are just going to update the title. So you can see here that our patch data is returned from the patch API. You can see ID as 1, user ID as 1, body is also same, only the title has been changed. That is, title is patch the title. You can see it here. Only the title has changed. Rest of all has not changed because we are patching just the title. And same is the output which is written from the patch API. So you can see here everything is same except the title which we have used for patching. So now let's see the example of delete API. So you can see we already have an example of delete API also here. This is not returning anything, we are just going to invoke it using the delete method. So let's write a delete method also. So let's go to the free API service.ts. We are just going to write a delete API. I'll just write delete, and which will be a type of observable. I'll just simply write return this dot HttpClient dot and delete. Delete is the inbuilt method used by HttpClient for calling the delete API. And here I'm going to pass the path of our delete API, that is this. I'm going to pass it here. Component.ts. Here I'm just going to write a string named as message, because the delete API is not going to return me anything. And here I'm just going to call the delete API. This dot free API service dot our delete method, which we have created here. Dot subscribe, and in the data we are just going to simply write this dot message equal to resource deleted successfully. So you can see here that we are calling this delete API and the ID is 1 for accessing the delete API. Now let's go to the HTML. Delete API, the path of the API, message. So let's run this. So you can see here that the delete API is called. So thus we have seen how to call the REST API using put method, patch method and delete method. So that's it guys. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe, like or share.